Okay, in my last video I said I would do something to show a little bit of the different hobby grade boards when it comes to the sound systems, and I have three of them. I don't have an L-Mod or a TCB, but this tank does have a Clark TK22, and this one has an ASP, and this one has an IBU, so we'll take a look at those. We'll start with the Clark. Now this tank does not have a lift-off top, so I really can't show you the board itself. And it just runs on a 6-channel radio, so I was able to use one of the really, low-cost ones, which is always good. And now Clark, you have to watch, because with Clark, as soon as you turn it on, it's live, and it'll move if you move the joystick, and you don't have to have the engine running. With a lot of them, you need the engine sounds to be on before the tank will move, but with this one, everything is totally live as soon as you turn it on. Also with Clark boards, they're tank specific in the TK20 series. This is the board for the M41. If you get the board for the Tiger, the sounds are only for the Tiger. The sounds can't be changed. I think you can add a 6-watt amp, but I'm not totally sure on that. He also makes the TK60 and the TK80, and I understand that the sound options are greatly improved on those boards, but I haven't had a chance to check one out. But I like the sounds that are on this board for the M41, the 50 cal. It'll also have like sound for different features, like there's elevation and Clark has those half-stick commands that I find so difficult. You see, when you turn the lights on, you get the click. And the startup sound on the M41 is just really cool. So anyway, the Clark sounds are pretty good. The disadvantage is that they're tank specific. If you want to change the sound, you got to change the whole board. But that could be different on his TK60 and TK80. I'm not sure. Then there's the IBU2. This is an IBU2 Pro. Now the Clark didn't have an additional amp. The next two will. This one has the TPA amp. Let's get a good look at the board first. Okay, this is the IBU2, the bottom larger board. And this smaller board that's piggybacked on top of it, that's the TPA amp. It gives you two different channels, one for your engine sounds and one for your secondary sounds, like machine guns and stuff. If you don't have the TPA amp on there, you basically it's like the stock, just one speaker plugs in and everything's on the one. On this one, I've got the secondary sounds, the machine gun and the main gun and rotation. They're running on that stock speaker, because the stock speakers, they're not bad actually. And the engine sounds are through these two 1-inch speakers. And I have the 1-inch speakers hooked up with a Viper unit. That's way up here. Now that unit controls the volume from the transmitter for my engine sounds. For my other channel, for the guns and stuff, I just keep that turned up all the way, because they're only active when you want them to be. When you fire the machine gun, you hear the sound. Otherwise, those sounds are all quiet. And the main reason I am so fond of volume control from the transmitter is that if you hear something funny in the running gear, like if your track's making a funny click or something like that, it's really helpful to be able to turn down the engine sounds so that you can hear what is going on with everything else. Now, This board, you can change the sounds just by pulling the SD card and putting it in your computer and going with the different sounds. You can change your engine, you can change your gun, you can change your machine gun. This is set up for the Jagdtiger, so it's got the Maybach 12-cylinder engine, same one that's in the King Tiger and the Tiger 1. It's got the 128 millimeter cannon with a shell ejection sound. There was some argument about those because these use a gun like a naval gun where you got a separate projectile and the powder charge. In naval guns, the powder charge are usually in bags, but I'm told that for these guns, they were in it just like a brass, almost like a blank cartridge. So they would produce quite the ejection noise when they came out. But I've got this one running on a FlySky i10. Bad boy right here. And that's the receiver for it. And having the extra channels always helps. Like this is servo operated machine gun. So that's stuff that I can do that you can't do with, stock, even if you, unless you're using like the V3 with your own transmitter. If you got more than a 6-channel setup, you'll find uses for the extra channels, believe me. This one, like I said, I have volume control from the transmitter on the main engine sounds. See if I can get this bad boy to fire up. Oh, I'm on the wrong I'm on the wrong tank. Sorry about that, guys. That's one thing I like about the i10, though. We might as well look at that while we're at it. It's really easy to change stuff back and forth. We go to models, select model. We're going to go to Jagdtiger. We were on Hetzer. So now we're on Jagdtiger, and hopefully we'll be able to get it to fire up. I also know it's Jagdtiger because I heard the servo for the machine gun kick in. Good startup sound on that one. So if you remember the stock stuff, that's quite a difference there. That's a 15-watt amp in the TPA. And it makes a big difference in sound. And I saved the best for last, and that's the ASP. Now, these boards here aren't available anymore, but if you go to Kevin's website, he's got ASP 2.5. And I sure hope he comes through with those because, in my opinion, this is about the best tank control board out there. Of course, I haven't tried the L-Mod, but from what I've seen so far. Now, this one, the lower board is the ASP itself, and the upper is the Juno board, and that piggybacks on there just like the TPA piggybacks onto the IBU. And this one has provisions for 3 speakers. It's got a 20-watt amp, and some of the features on this for sound are just great. It's got music, it's got incoming rounds, it's got voice tracks on there. Well, you'll be able to see the front of the tank for this. Now this runs on the Turnigy 9XR Pro, and Kevin Granum set this one up for me. With the ASP, you need at least a 7-channel radio. Well, now Kevin's got it set up so
Los
that
geht's.
you can run the radio on a 4 or 6 channel, but you'll lose some of the features. One of them is that it's got 4 different engine startup sounds. And on cold start, you can select any one of the 4. After it's been started once and shut back down, if you want to go back to cold start, you have to turn the tank on and then turn it back off. So the warm start will be the same for all of them. This one you can control the volume from the TX. It's just a feature of the board. You don't have to have a separate Viper unit, and it turns everything down. Your engine sounds, your secondary sounds, everything gets turned up and down with the one volume control. So you have rotation. Elevation. One thing I like about this board is that the rotation sound is different depending on whether or not the engine is running, because in the real tank it had power rotation, but only when the engine was running. You also have the sounds when you turn the lights on and off. Turn the smoke on and off from the transmitter. You can rev the engine. Oops, sorry, that's music. It's got, I think, 4 different rev tracks. Randomly selected by the ASP. I love the fact that it's got 2 different machine guns, bow machine gun and turret machine gun, the coaxial. Now, let me shut this down. With this, everything still works. Coaxial machine gun. Bow gun. Two distinctly different soundtracks. All the functions and sounds work on this one. You still get your incoming sounds. Four different tracks randomly selected by the board. Music, 4 different tracks randomly selected by the board. Voice commands, 4 different tracks randomly selected by the board. This is the warm start. That's the only starting track available unless you turn the tank off and turn it back on, and then you can select from any one of 4. The board supports barrel recoil for the airsoft as well. By far my very favorite board, and I really hope he comes through with the ASP 2.5. I'll be picking up a couple of them if he does. So there's a little comparison in hobby grade sound systems. They're quite a bit more sophisticated, quite a bit more complicated to program and put together. I still say for airsoft tanks, I'll stick with the V3. This is my flagship tank. This one's got all the bells and whistles that I've ever put on a tank. And I think everybody needs one like that, don't you think? But the other hobby grade boards are excellent for both airsoft and IR. But like I keep saying, for my airsoft tanks, I think the V3 is going to suit me. If I could have a wish list on that, I would just want to be able to control the volume from the transmitter and the lights on and off. And I'd want the barrel to go up and down at will instead of having to cycle through. If they were to add that to the V3 transmitter, it'd be like the perfect airsoft board, and I'd be one happy camper. So there you go, a little more on sound. See you next time.